Hello, everyone. Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream, Crafting Annihilation, which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Tomb of Annihilation. If you're playing characters Mannix, Celeste, Gillian, George, or Theron, go away! The stream is not meant for you, but for the rest of you, welcome. We stream our Tomb of Annihilation sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening. You can watch all of our D&D live series as well as reviews and Let's Plays on my YouTube page. Read weekly session recaps at roguewatson.com. Follow me on Twitter at roguewatson and join our official Discord discussion group. Invite link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/roguewatson. Shoutouts to platinum patrons Andrew, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Nick, Andy, and Chris. And gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy, Yuma, Marco Stead, Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, A.K., Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard, Lounge, Sam, Arash, Olympus Buds, and Jerome. Thank you all very much for your support. Also, shoutouts to new patron Brian. Welcome to the Patreon. For our campaign, we use Roll20.net for streaming. I use Open Broadcaster software with Streamlabs. Hello, Aussie, Kilter, Jerome, and Furnace, Lumpy. All of you, Corona Annihilation, I think sounds good and also terrible. But yes, we need that to happen. We need to annihilate coronavirus for sure. Alas, all I can do is annihilate players, which we'll talk about. We'll talk about that this show as well. So I put up a poll on the Patreon about just kind of getting a feeling for what everybody's favorite content was for the channel. Obviously, besides the Friday, our live play D&D show, and unsurprisingly, Crafting Annihilation was the most voted. So I think for the next campaign, I don't want to change it up now because we're pretty late into this campaign, and I've got a good format going and a good schedule. I think for the next campaign, I'm going to split up Crafting Annihilation into maybe 2 streams. This is all just kind of tentative planning, but since you're watching, I'll let you know my thoughts. One of them will be the one you're used to, which is me prepping for the session on the Thursday before, but then I could also split it and basically do a, post-mortem, kind of like what I do now, which is I spend like half the time recapping and then half the time prepping. So instead, I could split those into 2 streams and do the recap one, maybe even like the Saturday morning after the Friday night show. And that way, that one won't be too long. So it would just be me going through the process of talking about what worked, what didn't. And then we could go all the way to Thursday to actually do and just focus purely on prep work. So I think that might be a fun patron stretch goal to include for the next campaign, to basically do 2 of these kind of DM only streams of the campaign. So let me know what your thoughts are for that, but I'll talk more about that in the future. As I said, I don't want to switch anything up for this campaign because we are pretty late into this campaign. So to cover the recap, once again, the player spent a long time trying to deal with the slot at first, and I was just shutting that shit down pretty early. As we mentioned on Crafting last week, I was interested in not using the slot again because we'd used it a lot, frankly. And I was really trying to do everything I can to just put it on the back burner. Obviously, things changed. We finally got to level 3, which is great. I had correctly presumed that the party would deal with this hallway first, because you go down the stairs, it's the first big hallway, and my party seems keen on exploring all the areas and doing all of the things. The bummer is, we just had 2 sessions of lots of combat with Papazodal's tomb and then with Withers' office. Oh, I am very glad that they skipped the workshop. I was worried about that would turn into another fight scene, and I did have one of the tomb dwarves knock on the door just to kind of create a more dynamic thing going on, and they just kind of killed him pretty easy. And then they decided to actually steer clear of the workshop and kind of follow George to deal with the slot and all that. And then Mannix left an eye behind. So I'll need to leave a note that at some point, I want to reward him for basically spying on them. And maybe during a rest or something, he can see like that door open, and maybe the dwarves are, bringing another tomb guardian out to replace something else somewhere. So just kind of a fun little thing for the players. I don't necessarily see it affecting them unless they have to make their way back through an area after a long time. Then they might see something be replaced, like one of the Tomb Guardians could be replaced, for example. So that would be an interesting twist, the fact that they didn't take those guys out, so they are kind of behind them. But I don't plan on necessarily harassing them, at least for another couple sessions, just because we've had so much combat, and I don't really need to throw more combat at them. So we had the big chain fight here, which is an odd thing because the chain itself isn't really a factor. It just splits their hit points up, which effectively doubles their hit points if you try and focus fire, although my party actually doesn't really focus fire that well to begin with. Not the most tactically sound party when it comes to combat. So it ended up being just a lot of combat back to back to back, and including that Tomb Guardian down here and the rotating crawlway, which this is an interesting case of, as long as the party doesn't long rest between taking this guy out and then going through here, then they'll basically be able to make it through this area without anything bad happening, because they essentially solved this room, which is to take this guy out, which is an odd thing because none of the other rooms actually work like that. They're not so mundane where they literally have somebody with a lever who's ready to, pull the lever to make the thing happen. Usually all the things are just, D&D traps where things just happen. So that was kind of an odd thing to do. But if you notice, Celeste and George alone were able to kill this thing. I think Celeste did like 50 damage because she could sneak up on it, which was pretty impressive. But we found the secret door, which led to Yaka the Skull, which changed the entire outcome of this session. Holy crap. So Yaka was a lot of fun. Obviously, I roleplayed him as a super annoying, mocking creature that can't be harmed at all. I wish there were more concrete rules about how Yaka works, and it does. The only thing that mentions is the fact that you can feed him gems, which I had him finally reveal that because I'm not sure the players would ever know that unless he was more forthcoming about that information after George went down. And obviously George being tempted by it is just fantastic. Like, I read all these stories of recaps about how players just don't engage with a lot of things because it's it's a death dungeon and you should know not to touch the things in the most part. And that would generally is good advice for going into a deadly dungeon. And my party is the complete fucking opposite. They will touch everything. They will do all the things. They will take all the consequences. It's great for me as a DM because they will just do all of the things. And poor George was saddled with this skull that immediately everybody was kind of freaked out about. It confers disadvantage, and we had that thing on the stream, obviously, where at first I thought that meant it would be disadvantage on everything but saves. But as we learned, when it just says ability checks, that does not include attack rolls. So it's actually not as bad as I thought, although still permanent disadvantage on every single skill check. And Blanky pointed out, fan of the show, that does include initiative rolls, because the initiative roll is a dexterity check, which I totally missed that. That's interesting. That would be the one like combat factor, I guess. I guess if he was like trying to grapple somebody, that counts as a check. So it would be pretty bad. And they were immediately wanting to deal with this crisis. And I guess George's first thought was like, well, I'm going to kill myself and that will get rid of the curse. And I could have let that happen. And I thought about it. And, here's the other crazy thing. So the purple mold, the eyeballs is kind of fun because they jack with and of course I knew my players were going to jack with an eyeball because that's just who they are. They're going to do it. And immediately an eye shot out. And we talked about this last week on Crafting Annihilation, where anytime somebody jacks with the purple mold, I roll a D10 because that's all the beholder eye rays. And most of them aren't that bad out of combat. Even if you fail to save, it's like you're slowed or you're paralyzed, but that doesn't really matter outside of combat. If you just mess with it while you're walking down the hall, yeah, that happens. And everybody's like, oh, that was weird. And you move on with your life. For whatever fucking reason, every single time something happened where I had to roll, I rolled one of the like 2 or 3 damaging rays, which is only like a 20 or 30% chance. And they do a devastating amount of damage. And yes, I did roll spur of the moment that when Reese, playing as Gillian, shot wide with her fire blast, her circlet of blasting. I think it was like a rolled a 1, which I don't think critical fails are actually a thing in 5e, but I thought that was a fun consequence. Is like it fires off into the purple mold, which is like, that's just a thing I decided, well, if you roll a 1 on a ranged attack, it's going to hit the walls. And that's usually how we roleplay it too, like that, that shot goes wide and it thunks against the wall or something. And this is actually a consequence of this level, is that if you hit that stuff, and maybe you hit an eye or something, and then something pops out and will shoot you. And I just happen to roll a freaking insane 50 plus damage attack. So the actual combat wasn't that bad. It's all of these eye stalks popping out of the purple mold that's been devastating the party. And sure enough, George poked an eye, and I guess he got the result he wanted because he wanted to go down. But I ruled that, and the problem is it doesn't actually mention that in the book, so I just had to make a judgment call on like, okay, when does Yaka's curse actually end? But I ruled that if the player still exists, then Yaka's still tied to it. It doesn't, just because you went down, because the way I understand it, it's just you go unconscious. Like you're still, you're bleeding out or whatever. You're not dead. You never really die. Well, I mean, you can die and you can get revived. But in this case, if you die, then you're basically permanently dead in this campaign while the whole, death curse is going on. So I ruled that just because he went down, but he survived, Yaka stays on him. Now, we can talk about this part, which is, again, I rolled an eye ray. It was the death ray. And the death ray does specifically mention that if you are reduced to 0 hit points, you automatically die. Let's look at the exact wording. The targeted creature must succeed on a DC 16 dex saving throw or take 10d10 necrotic damage, which averages 50 some, which I think at that point, with the amount of damage I rolled, I'm not sure George could have survived even if he had made the save. I think he was actually hurting pretty bad because of another eye roll. Eye ray, and the target dies if the ray reduces it to 0 hit points. Now, I talked about this a little bit on the Discord chat on our No Players Allowed chat, because that's where we can kind of break these things down. But not to go off on a huge rant about player death in D&D, obviously I have my own, virginity when it comes to killing players, but I do have a problem with abilities that arbitrarily overrule the built-in death rules for D&D. There are certain situations where I think it definitely makes sense to rule that somebody cannot be revived. If your body is disintegrated, if your body melts in lava, if your body is pulverized by something, although even pulverized, again, this is a fucking universe filled with magic and people are raised dead, maybe not left and right, but it's a thing that can happen. Like you can go to your local temple, or maybe you have to go to a big city, but still, it's a thing that can freaking happen in this universe. I can see why there are certain situations that you cannot come back from. I do understand that. But I don't understand something that's just called because again, necrotic damage is a thing that happens all the time. But this one it just seems arbitrary. Yes, it's called a death ray, but that could just describe the fact that it's necrotic damage. It just doesn't, I don't know. I'm dissatisfied by a lot of abilities that just straight up, you die if it happens to bring you to 0 hit points. Now, the Disintegration Ray is different. Sort of, even though it just says Disintegration Ray. But that one does say it reduces you to a pile of fine gray dust. So that would be a different argument. That one I could certainly see where if you fail it, you are literally ashed. And I think I'm going to keep that one in. Because it literally tries to disintegrate you. But the Death Ray... So the compromise I made was to force the player to roll all of their death saves until they either died or stabilized. So basically, we're leaving it up to the dice, and that is a courtesy that I'm giving because I do not like the auto kill. It's just completely unsatisfying. I mean, it was also an unsatisfying moment in the story that George literally kills himself and he's permanently dead, and then that gets rid of the Yaka, and it's just, again, you can't ever plan those things because of the nature of D&D. You always plan these super heroic, awesome deaths involved. But that one definitely felt pretty lame, even though it was his choice to poke the thing, and I just happened to roll a freaking 10 on the D10. So the compromise was he had to roll all his death saves. Now, and I think he rolled we can probably scroll up there. It was a bit of a nail biter though. If you watch the stream live, I know we had a couple players who were freaking out about this. So he succeeded, then he failed, then he succeeded, then he succeeded. So it was actually always, he was never under the gun, behind the count, as they say in baseball. He was always looking pretty good on that. After the show, Chris, who plays Mannix, revealed to me that he did have a portent die ready to use had George gotten behind the count. So if he, in other words, if he had 2 fails, or basically if he ever got 2 fails, then Mannix would have used his portent die. So actually the only way he could have failed completely is if he ended up with 2 fails, 1 success, and then Mannix used his portent die, and then he had to fail again before rolling any successes. So it ended up being an even lower percentage for George to perish. But there was a chance. I did leave a chance open. I gave him some, a pretty good chance to not perish, but that was on the table. So that was, thus far in our years of playing D&D, the closest we have come to a player death, and it was just because a player character was driven insane by Yaka, who had only been around for 20 minutes maybe. It was one scene, and then we had a combat encounter, and then it was like another little scene, but I was using him quite a bit, and they immediately had to deal with this situation. So I had Yaka stick around. And then, because that happened, now I wanted to reveal, okay, you can get rid of him by feeding him gems. Well, the fine print is that it takes 10,000 gold worth of gems, which is kind of prohibitive, basically, for anything other than maybe you feed him like the Eye of Zaltik or something, which I still need to look up if I want to do something with that. That seems weird. Anyway, the party didn't have enough gems, so I'm thinking, okay, do I keep track of the monetary value, or do I just say, okay, the party has spent enough magic items, which is an interesting payment plan. Essentially, you can just pay enough in crystals to get rid of this curse. I was thinking of allowing that, and I even mentioned like, oh, he's getting pretty full, because I'm like, I don't have to use 10,000. They don't know the total cost. I can do whatever I want. So I'm thinking, well, if they do end up pooling enough of their treasure together, then I can maybe cancel the curse and we can move on from there. Even though Yaka's been fun, I can see that the party immediately wants to deal with the situation, not just have him hang around and ruin all their stealth attempts and everything else. So I was thinking about letting them go ahead. And then Mannix reminded me about the Slod gem. And I did feel bad because he had a fun idea planned, which was to lure the Slod in there and then have Mannix control the Slod and put on a show. That did sound like a cool moment. I'm glad he explained it, because I thought that was a neat thing that happened. And I felt really bad. And you can see me go, oh, well, you don't have to, because I was like, oh, the player's revealing that he did a cool idea, and now he's not going to do it. So I immediately had to switch to, okay, now I got to do a cool idea with this Slod gem. And I did it as, first I was going to do it like, okay, the Slod gem will put him over the top and that will cancel the curse. But then I was like, okay, I can take this a bit further. And again, this was all spur of the moment. I didn't have any of this planned. If they feed Yaka the Slod gem, then that will confer the curse onto the Slod. It will destroy the gem, but now it creates some kind of crazy relationship between Yaka and the Slod. And then I was going to have the skull just fly off. And then if you notice in the stream, I say, and you hear this, yowling, and I was going to hope that was going to put an end to it. But then George is like, no, I'm going to follow the skulls. I was like, shit. Okay. So now I got to figure out where the goddamn Slod is. And all of this is done completely live. Again, this is part of the joys and terrors of D&D. So I was like, shit, well, where's the Slod? Where, I have no plans for this. He's in the DM realm, which is Schrodinger's box. It's everywhere and nowhere. So I was like, okay, somewhere on this level, because I don't want to have them go, back and forth too much. I want to keep them on this level. And I was like, okay, there's actually the perfect spot where it can be, which is this little safe corner, kind of like in an air vent, whatever this weird ass area is. And I just plumped the Slod there and then had them all run across the area and find the Slod. And super credit to George for having this awesome twist ending, because I was picturing, okay, we're going to jump into another initiative battle. I might just montage it and let the party just kill this thing because I'm kind of sick of it by now. This was kind of the result. This is the reward for feeding it the slot. I'm just thinking in my head, this isn't going to be a real fight. And then I mentioned the fact that it's so, they're just kind of screwing with each other because the slot's got Nang's, possession, so it wants to keep the skull, but the skull's obviously driving the slot insane, and George knows firsthand how awful the skull is. So I love Raymond to death that he straight up said, okay, I'm going to walk away now. I'm going to take my sword back, which is why he needed to follow. I forgot that he needed to go after the slot to get his sword back. That was why it was such a prominent thing. I thought I could try and keep the slot in my back pocket, but obviously taking away a player's weapon necessitated having to deal with that immediately. And he literally took a sword back and then just walked away. And I thought that was such a badass, cool thing to do. And it was a really satisfying ending to the Slod saga, which has become a goddamn saga in our campaign. Who knew that this thing 3 sessions ago would become such a big freaking deal? So it was surprising. It was satisfying. I really enjoyed the end of it. It ended up wrapping up nicely the Slod, the gem, and Yaka the Skull Curse all in one blow. So I actually thought that was pretty fun and pretty satisfying. I'm going to catch up on the chat now. Nikhil, the party is level 9 currently. I'm surprised my auto Streamlabs thing hasn't posted on there because I'm lazy about turning it off, unless I did turn it off. We're all happy in chat that George is ready to pick it up. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you knew he was going to do that. It's nice when you have a party or DMing that are not afraid to touch things, interact, and take risks. Nothing worse than a paranoid party. I mean, what's sad is that being paranoid is the smarter thing to do from a tactical perspective, is to take a long time, investigate, perceive every door, detect magic, do all that. That's the smart thing to do. Doesn't necessarily make for the most entertaining party and experience, however. So I am kind of glad they're a little more seat of their pants also. I do think he should have died. It's a death ray. Yeah, I gotcha. The party can revive him with a spell. Aussie, they can't. That's a problem we have with Tomb specifically. And this is, I'll go off on a little bit of a rant here. A lot of people assume that I have a big problem with player death. My only problem is I haven't had it yet, so I don't have a precedent for it. But I don't really have a problem with it because, as I mentioned, Raise Dead and Resurrection are a thing in this universe, and if you can gather the body back, then you can eventually bring that person back, or somebody could play a different character. That could be a thing too. I do think it's weird to have somebody die this late in the game after we've been playing for, almost 2 years of this campaign, but it can happen. That needs to be a thing on the table. The problem is, in this campaign specifically, if you die, you cannot be resurrected, at least until the end of the campaign, because your soul is being sucked into the soulmonger, and most of the bodies, although I guess in this area it doesn't because they can find bodies, but in my campaign, most of the bodies just rise up as zombies and they're just completely soulless and nothing, and you can't be revived. So the actual main quest thing that's happening in this campaign is that people cannot be revived specifically, and that obviously applies to player characters. So that is a thing that I've had to keep in my, bank in terms of if somebody dies, it is for realsies. And the other factor is the fact that they're in the middle of the jungle and you can't really revive anybody during the course of the campaign anyway. They just don't have those kind of resources. So that puts a bit of an additional factor on it. Giving the players the option now makes it a precedent for all deaths. I mean, again, most deaths are that you fail death saving throws, so I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I have a problem when the game says, no, you don't get to roll death saving throws, you're just dead. That's what I have a problem with, because the game has established the way death saves work, and it gives you a chance to basically come back, gives your allies a chance to stabilize you if they can reach you. All that can happen. But then the game has a few abilities or a few things where it's like, hey, if you happen to fail this one save and you take enough damage, then you're just super dead and that's it. You don't get to pass go. You don't get $200. Those are the ones I have a problem with a caveat that certain ones, yes, they probably do auto kill you. If your body is melted in lava, I don't think you're coming back from that. That's the kind of thing where I don't think you can be... I don't think you're rolling death saves from that, for example. But if they can, if you're at 0, well, here's a good question. But if they rescue out, well, we'll talk about that when we get to the freaking last chamber. But I think if you hit 0 while you're in lava, you're probably fucking dead. So, but we'll talk about that when we get to, and we can talk more about those player death things when we get to the actual Beholder combat, because the Beholder does have a Disintegration Ray, and I am leaning towards letting that play out as it is, because the Beholder should be able to just fucking kill people, because it's a damn Beholder. Skull MVP. Yeah, everybody liked the skull. I liked the skull too. Unfortunately, the players did not like the skull. What came out of the player death talk from a while ago? I mean, it was a good, yeah, that was a good one. That was one of our first DM roundtables, I think. I think I'm, it feels, it feels a lot like virginity, where it's like you have to get over that hump, and then it becomes not a huge, well, it's maybe a bad example. It should always be a big deal, but we just haven't experienced it yet in all of our years and of playing D&D. I do think it's on the table. It can happen. But again, most deaths are going to happen because of failed death saves and not because of auto kills. That being said, there are some auto kills that I am leaning towards allowing. For example, falling in lava, your body melts from lava, your body melts from acid. The Disintegration Ray literally reduces you to a pile of dust. Those are the kind of things that I'm probably going to keep. I think I'm going to keep locked in, but some of them definitely seem a little too arbitrary. Oh, Sphere of Annihilation. If you're literally entire parts of you are shorn off, that's going to fucking kill you. Like, things that would not normally render you unconscious that you could be saved by, for example. Those are things that are going to kill you completely. And I guess the Pulverize would too, because you're not going to be unconscious from that. You're smushed to smithereens. So, yeah. Okay. We need to start talking about what level 3 is going to bring to the table. So, level 3, awkwardly, my players have now been dragged from one side of the level to the other in dealing with the Slod, and I kind of have to prep this whole level. And again, this is why it's going to be really advantageous, I think, for future campaigns to be able to separate the post-mortem recap into the prep session. So I think I'm going to plan on doing 2 DM only streams for our next campaign, and that way we can kind of break that up a little bit and be purely talking about what happened in the previous episode, and the next one purely planning for the next one. I did write down where all the Crystal Eye keys are, because that is a cool mini quest. It's not a side quest, because I am planning on putting the skeleton key in the Beholder layer, because that will force the players to come in here. I actually need to put them in there, don't I? There's my skeleton key. Just have them be hanging out in here. That way the player, they realize they haven't found the key yet. Because the bummer is, my complaint about this level is I wish this door was near the entrance, because I think it's better dungeon design if they see the door and what they need to open the door first, and then you can spend the rest of the dungeon looking for the keys, which is why I added the quest. I wanted to be a little more video gamey when it came to these quests and information that players should know, which is, and I believe we talked about this in last crafting, they found a picture of the door in Withers' office that had basically described the door. It's a big stone sealed door with a closed eye. I replaced the mirror with an eye, because I think the mirror is confusing since they found notes on a mirror, and this is not that mirror. So instead I made it an eye, and instead of the person getting more decrepit as they put the things in there, it'll be the eye opens. And it's got 10 smaller circular indentations, which are going to be the keys. And then every time a party finds one of these crystal eye keys, I'm going to add that to this quest log, for the same reason that I add the ones in the skeleton gate. So it's, to get a key, you have to also find 10 keys to open the door, and then fight the Beholder and get that skeleton key, because I do think this is a really cool marquee moment. It's a neat mid-boss section in the campaign. It's got a cool environmental hazard to go with it. We'll talk about the Beholder probably in a week or two when we actually get there, but I'm looking forward to that being a cool fight, and I do plan on leveling the party up to 10 after they have this battle, because it's a big boss battle, and that'll be a good kind of mid-dungeon time for most likely like a long rest and then all of that happening. So I think the timing should work out pretty well right there. For now, though, the party is probably going to most likely spend, if I had to guess, 2 sessions bumming around level 3, getting all this stuff done. Now, the cool thing is there is almost no combat for the rest of level 3, which is nice because we've had a lot of combat back to back to back, and that is not what this dungeon is necessarily about. In fact, this entire north part doesn't have any combat in it whatsoever. The Winds of Pandemonium do not. There's one clay golem down here, and then if they fail one of the shrines, which they were literally almost about to reach when George did his whole went down and then followed the skulls, which was Kubazan's tomb, I believe, is basically purely like role-playing and exploration, although if you do fail it, it does start a combat encounter with some wraiths, which I did roll their hit points last time. But on roll 20, I put these little crystal icons to remind myself where the crystal eye keys are as written in the book. There is, let's see, so let's talk about 30. So it'll be interesting to see if the players decide to, okay, we're here, let's do this, or if they decide, okay, we missed, a shrine and a door back there, let's go back there first. I have no idea where they're going to go or what they're going to decide to do, which is why I need to prep for all of those things happening. It is a bummer that we missed the Jackal Mask here, which is a neat thing. It's a neat way to tease this room because you get to see it from the past. So that is kind of a bummer that we ran past it. And I was having, again, I had no idea any of this was going on. I was able to just montage things real quickly as they were running past. But that's the only bummer is if they continue up this northeast route, which is fine, they just miss the look into the past thing, which becomes way less impactful if you happen to just see it after you've already completed this dungeon. But oh well, you can't really decide on the path the players are going to take in the order. But I mean, normally, because it's the entrance is over there, you would always pass through here and check that out. But because they literally ran through to go follow something, they actually ended up missing it. So that's a bit of a bummer on that one. Live by the dice, die by the dice. I gotcha. And that was kind of my compromise, is I was going to give him death saves, basically, and say, like, okay, well, you could die here. Although I am realizing that freaking divination wizards, which are way too powerful than every other wizard because those dice are so useful, you can use those on death saves, so that becomes a hell of a lot more useful to have those 10 plus divination, what do they call them, portent dies. Some players like dying. That is true. In fact, my wife has mentioned the fact that she's actually interested in bringing in her paladin character, for example, because she has a lot more fun role-playing that character. So that could be a true thing. It's just, I mean, that's why we play different characters in our campaigns, because I do have a lot of fun, playing new characters and DMing new characters and all that. It does feel a little weird to have them die this late. That's not at the end, but this is a very deadly dungeon. So, all right. So, room 31, which is the water room. This is the reflected hall. And this one has, unfortunately, does not have a whole lot of detail in the actual Roll20 map, now that I'm looking at it. Because there's supposed to be statues. The walls are slick with moisture. Oh, no, it's murals. Oh, okay, it's not statues. It's just murals showing animal-headed humanoids, but they're actually brandishing real weapons on the walls. And then there's a curtain of water, which I think, does that have dynamic lighting? It does. Okay. So you can't see beyond that. So that's what the players see. And then I believe this looks like, yeah, that's got dynamic lighting in there because this is supposed to be just a hidden little thing you can find. Interesting, it doesn't have the secret door symbol that they usually use. See, 2 alcoves are hidden behind 5 foot wide, 8 foot tall illusions of damp stone walls bearing paintings of hawk-headed female warriors. Hawk girl. Touching the surface of either section of wall reveals that it's stones. The images on them are illusions. So that means two things, I think. One of them, if they are illusions, does detect magic detect that they are illusions? It doesn't mention that. Usually the book's actually pretty good about mentioning like what magic things radiate. But I would assume it does say illusions of damp stone. And George will be able to see it as well. And he's already in 30 feet. So I need to make a note of that. Where are we at? The reflected hall. The fact that they can already see this illusionary wall, illusory, which contains a alcove with a plinth bearing a crystal eyeball 1 inch in diameter. A pale purple eyeball to the south and a bright green eyeball to the north. So there's an equal alcove on the other side, which again, George will be able to instantly see. And I think Mannix would detect that as an illusory wall also without even having to do his usual like passive perception thing. I don't know if perception can detect illusion magic. It would probably detect something maybe is off. Be an interesting ruling. Is this on the GM? Oh, it is. That's interesting. How did you do this, Roll20? Did you put this as a thing? Ah, okay. So I can actually move it onto the token layer when they reveal it. That's kind of cool. But I'll have to move the dynamic lighting also. Okay, so George can see the hidden alcove. And man, we assume Mannix always has detect magic on, basically. If you can cast as a ritual, I mean, it's basically always on. But I did mention I need him to tell me if he's casting it. Mannix's detect magic, detects illusion magic. And this one pertains to one of the Acererak clues, which is like walk through water with weapon in hand, I believe. Although this one, I feel like it's just pure trial and error. I don't know if there's actually a clever way of solving this one. Where are we at? Yeah, walk through water with weapon in hand. It's actually weird timing that they ended up at the first one of the clues right here. But yeah, so the walls and water is water everywhere. The curtain water is 1 foot thick, 7 foot high, 10 foot wide. It's a little waterfall. And that radiates an aura of conjuration magic. Okay, so I need to put that down. Curtain of water radiates conjuration magic. If Mannix basically steps forward at all, because I believe that's got a 30-foot range. Yeah, so if he steps forward any, he'll see that. You can dispel magic for an hour. If any creature passes through the curtain of water carrying a trident, nothing happens. Which there are weapons all over the walls. There's hand axes, maces, blowguns, sickles, and tridents. None of the ordering of or the heads matter at all. They're all different animal-headed humanoids, which I think are all just red herrings. But if any creature passes through the curtain without a trident, so all they're going to do immediately, all the players are going to do is take their weapons out and walk through the curtain, and that's going to immediately set the trap off because there's no indication that you need to have a certain kind of weapon. Water erupts as a fierce wave flowing north and south. Any creature in either hall is slammed by the water. Must make a DC 15 strength saving throw. My party is not good at strength. On a failed save, the creature takes 4d6 bludgeoning damage and is swept to the end of the hall with such great force that it falls prone. Not that that matters outside of combat. If you take half damage, but you're not swept away, Water expelled by the curtain disappears before it can flow beyond the confines of the hallways. Water also does not enter the hidden alcoves, so creatures that are safe from the wave's effect. Yeah, that's the only thing. It's a weird... that's interesting. Use colors, smells, sounds for detect magic. It's a weird area because there's... The only clue you have is to walk with weapon in hand. I mean, I can explain the murals. It does say they brandish real weapons hanging on the walls, and I can explain what weapons everybody's holding, and then let them try and figure out, because they're going to try and overanalyze this. I'm going to explain like all the different headed people wielding weapons, and they're going to try to figure out, okay, what does this mean to this? And, you know, I'm feeling they're just going to be, I don't know, it's very trial and error. I changed it so any weapon worked, but I think it's dumb. Yeah, it is dumb. Just because there's not a good clue for that. The only clue is that you have to walk with a weapon in hand. So obviously all the players are just going to hold their weapons, you know, their own weapons in their hands and walk through, and that's going to immediately set the trap off. The problem is I don't think you can ever actually go north if you don't... Well, that's not true. If you make the save, you're not swept away. Now, it doesn't say... Does it immediately reset? How does the timing work on this? So, in other words, can somebody set the trap off, and if you make the save, can you just run through the curtain real quick, or does that just keep setting off? Because it doesn't get triggered until somebody steps through the curtain. So it would happen... And it doesn't mention anything after that. I would probably rule that if you made the save... Well, I'll just say you're knocked prone, though. Even if you make the save, you're knocked prone. Creature that succeeds on the saving throw takes half damage and falls prone, but is not swept away. So that's supposed to stop you from... I don't know. How soon... How would you rule how soon somebody could actually run through the curtain... after setting off the trap, because I'm thinking that maybe you just have to allow the party to kind of brute force this one a little bit. There's an image of Aquaman on the mural. Had spikes, Jerome. For funsies. Honestly, 46 is not too shabby, and my party is so bad at strength, they're going to be flailing left and right from a bunch of water surging down the hall. So, let's see. If somebody walks through, let's say George, because Lord knows it'll be George, who, by the way, is sitting at 17 hit points. He almost has like 15% of his HP because of all that shit that befell him after all the fights and all the messing around with the eye stalks. He steps through the thing. He makes the save, which means he's right here in the curtain. This isn't even its own tile. It's like a pass between tiles. So somebody could walk through there. Well, here's the key. If you walk through the curtain, I would probably rule that you could brute force it, at least for the person walking through, because it specifically mentions it knocks you out both sides. So you would just get pushed to the north side at that point. So the party could brute force this if they wanted to, one at a time, have somebody, you know, ideally the rest of the party would be down here in the hall where there's no water, and one at a time could walk through here. That would set the trap off, but I would rule that you would probably be knocked north, because you can. It seems like you can walk through the curtain, and then the trap would be triggered, and you would take the damage and either fall prone or stand up. But either way, you'd probably make it through. That's interesting. I could give advantage, yeah, for having a swim speed. So I'm thinking about, because I don't see a way of the party logically knowing that you just need a certain kind of weapon to be able to step through here. Also, I think there's only 2 tridents on each side. Or are they? Does it mention actually how many? I don't think it actually mentions the number, does it? Oh, yeah, it does. 12 painted figures line each hall, 6 on the west and 6 on the east wall. And there's 6 total different kinds. Which means I think there's 2 on each side of the hall. So, I don't know. But I'm thinking that if somebody walks through, if they fail it, I'll still let them get to the other side, and then they'll just have to trigger the trap and take the damage. And then everybody's like, well, that was a bummer that we didn't figure it out, but you did make it to the other side, basically. Although you have to kind of annoyingly like step out of the way of the room because the entire room erupts. So the first time everybody might get hit, but the second time, surely they'll kind of figure things out a little easier. But that's probably how I'm going to rule it here, is that you can make it through. Now, if 2 people are behind each other, I mean, you could have maybe, and everybody wants to, for some reason, run in there at once. Then it gets a little tricky to rule that. There might have to be like an athletics check or something, because the second the first person steps through, the trap gets triggered. So depending on how far back somebody else is, I could rule that, you could give me an athletics check to try to basically run quickly through the waterfall, because the trap is coming. It just depends on which side of the curtain you want to be on. I agree, Jared. I don't necessarily want to make things too clear for them. I'm just wanting to let them brute force it if they need to, because I imagine they'll be confused as they like hold their weapons up and try to walk through here and set the trap off. But at least it's not super damaging. Honestly, it's more like a fucking water park event than anything else. As you go like slip and sliding down one side of the tunnel or the other. But yeah, I could use Orvex. Orvek's still alive, by the way. I don't know we don't have like a pool for the players, but even though the players are desperately wanting to get him killed and have him do terrible things, he is currently still alive. So beyond there, we get to some very interesting parts of this level. Possibly my favorite parts, because they are really, really interesting in their design. In fact, how does this one work with Roll20's dynamic lighting? So this is a really cool, creepy trap where it's just a regular ass tunnel. You can crawl through it. A lot of these tunnels, by the way, in these couple levels here, we had a bunch on level 2 that the players went in, and now level 3. And if you make it halfway into this tunnel, which one is this? 32? Rotating crawlway. The halfway point is a pressure plate. And if you step on it, the entire thing rotates, which essentially cuts you off. Okay, how does this work? If I put it on the token layer, does that flip it? Is the token layer different then? Oh, interesting. How did Roll20 do this? So it still looks like that. I guess you can rotate this thing? Is that the only difference? Why was this on the GM layer to begin with? Is there any dynamic lighting here? Oh, okay. Tunnel B needs lighting. So you can't actually rotate the crawlway, but you can cut them off via dynamic lighting. Well, that's not going to work. You'd have to... Oh, what a pain in the ass. You'd have to move these, because it's going to... The idea is it rotates 90 degrees. So this section goes here, which doesn't look good because there's not a connecting thing between them, unfortunately. And this doesn't work either because... Shoot. There also needs to be ones right here, otherwise the people right here just see into the entire DM zone. They need to actually go halfway. Okay, so this isn't actually as cleverly designed as I was hoping. But it's a neat idea. You go halfway through this crawlway, and you hit a pressure plate, although it does mention you see a narrow seam in the stonework with a successful DC 15 perception check. If the check succeeds by 5 or more, the character can deduce that the seam represents a point where 2 sections of tunnel can detach from one another. I don't know if the players would ever actually stop and worry about looking down a tunnel. They've been down so many tunnels now. This is all they're going to see initially. Is this. And then when they make it halfway through, I need to grab a token so I can get vision. Let's take Mr. Mannix. Uh-oh. That's not good. Let's close that off. All right, these things aren't fucking long enough. There we go. All right, we're closed. That's creepy. And then if you get halfway in, you get on a pressure plate, and the tunnel rotates 90 degrees and sinks 5 feet as it turns with both ends of the tunnel. So this whole thing turns 90 degrees and is now this way, and you're 5 foot lower. At the same time, a second crawlway perpendicular to the first rotates 90 degrees clockwise, or I guess it turns this way. So this end now becomes attached to here, so now you see a dead end. Tunnel B connects the rest of the crawlway. A new passage running north to south is formed. Oh, this is supposed to be a passage through then. I thought this was a dead end. So this is just showing this for map purposes. But so it is actually a new north to south passage. Except both tunnels ascend 5 feet as they rotate 90 degrees clockwise when the trap triggers. The only way to return tunnel A to its original position is to trigger the trap from tunnel B. So there's an equal trap going that way for tunnel B. That's interesting. This is going to be really difficult to do on Roll20. I can already tell. It's going to be a lot of me explaining exactly how this works in 3-dimensional space. You can also only have air for 24 hours. This is scary because you basically have to use, well, I guess Manus could use like a summon, maybe. Has he used his summon since they long rested? When did they long rest? It was after the Slod. Somebody help me out. Did Mannix use his summoned frog in the Papazotl fight? I don't remember. Because if he did, then he doesn't have the frog available. They could use the genie. The genie could certainly help them. Although the genie would not be able to... I guess you can't use like pass wall and stuff in the dungeon. So actually, I don't know how useful the genie would be. You're right. There's no dead end. Okay. So, but does this still work on the dynamic lighting layer? So one person, so it's going to rotate, and then I'm basically going to put the other person like, so maybe I need to make a new, I'll keep this like this for my own sanity. And then when it rotates, I'm going to have to just I'll just put somebody like here, in which case we need to draw another line and just say the fact that, it's not actually this long, it's twice as long, but it's still a dead end tunnel on both sides. And you are trapped in your little tiny world. So basically, like that. And unfortunately, that's the best I can do. because I can't actually use this crossways path, because if I use this one and open it up this way, then the other people are blocked that way. So I can't ever show both at once. I have to either show the north and south path or the east and west path. And it's going to make more sense to always show the north and south path because I've always have that path open and the other path is always a dead end. Now, the advantage is Tunnel B, which is the one that is rotated. I mean, I think I can, I'm with you, Arno, but I think I can hopefully describe it well enough. Especially when they see the Roll20 lighting, I could be like, okay, the whole thing just rotated, clockwise and sunk 5 feet. So you're essentially, which you would be here now, and you can just have this crawlway to yourself. And then in Tunnel B, it reveals that there's a body there. So let's add a body. Do I have a body? Roll20, show me a body. What happens if I type body? What do you got? Calculating. What do you got? You got a drunk, you got a silhouette, you got people in jeans, that's not gonna help me. A knight on fire, that's extremely specific. That one could work, although they just choked to death, I think. Yeah, I guess that could. Well, it would be a fucking skeleton, wouldn't it? It'd be a corpse. Show me a. I could put a zombie in there. That'd be kind of fun. Although it wouldn't really be combat. It would be dumb. You could take out a zombie. Maybe I won't use a token. I'm dissatisfied with these results. Do I want to use a zombie? Is this supposed to be a dead body? Oh no, it does say a skeletal corpse. Alright, show me a fucking skeleton. Skeleton, please. Skeleton. Yes, that's what I want. A hammerhead shark skeleton. Good job, Roll20. So many times do I need a hammerhead shark skeleton. That is a cool idea, though. There we go. Need to be a little bit smaller. Actually, can barely see that. Doesn't stand out very well, does it? Put a little bit further. Okay, I'll put you on the GM layer. Okay. So the cool thing is, if they do the rotating crawlway in the new area, they will see a body of one of the Company of the Yellow Banner, which what I want to be doing is actually updating. Oh, you know what I forgot? Theron attuned to that fucking staff, didn't he? Which means he's going to turn into a half goat. Right? Totally forgot about that. Now that I'm thinking of the Company of the Yellow Banner, that's a thing. Any character who attunes to it transforms into a goat-human hybrid over the course of 3 days. Which they have not long rested since he attuned to it. That was a short rest. But I need to remember next time they long rest, he's going to have shaggy fur grow all over his body. Actually, it's throughout the first day shaggy fur begins to grow all over the cursed character's body. For 24 hours, the character's eyes become goat-like. I don't know what the hell that even means. What does a goat's eyes look like? Like a doll's eyes. Stumpy horns sprout from the brow. That's fun. I need to put a reminder on there for me. Theron should become Goatman. On the last day, the character's fingers and toes meld into double digits, and the horns grow to full length. It's purely aesthetic, though. It doesn't actually change anything. But, I mean, still, you're a half goat person. You look like a fucking demon, is what would happen. Because I think it's supposed to be a goat-headed staff, right? That was the idea. Goat eyes are creepy. I'll take your word for it, Corey. I have no idea. I haven't stared into the eyes of a goat in some time. Anyway, on the corpse, they will find one of the 10 crystal eyes that you need, as well as a +1 Yikolwa, which is like a spear. Which I don't know at this point if a +1 weapon is very exciting for the party to find. I think Gillian still doesn't have a magic weapon, so I could put something in there that she could use. What can bards use? What are bards proficient in? Is it simple weapons? I could put something in there that she could use. Bard. Let's see what it say. Simple weapons, hand crossbows, long swords, rapiers, and short swords. I think she's using a rapier now. So I could just change that +1 Yikolwa into a +1 rapier. And that would give her something to use. Or a crossbow. Does she use a crossbow? She does use a crossbow. I still think she's not using any magic weapons. She's got the bagpipes. She's casting a lot of spells. Yeah, just a regular rapier and a regular hand crossbow. Okay, I could give her one of those. Is a trident a simple weapon? Is the only thing, or do tritons have certain things they can use? Let's see, I don't think Triton gives you extra proficiencies, does it? Triton. No, it doesn't look like it. Emissary of the Sea. Okay, so I'm thinking either a +1 rapier or a +1 hand crossbow they can find on the body. As well as a Dungeoneer's pack, 8 gold pieces, an ivory back scratcher shaped like a dinosaur claw, a holy symbol of Bahamut, and a red crystal eyeball. There's the auto thing. I was waiting for that to show up. Okay, so let's make a note and change that to... let's see. And the body is supposed to be a Dragonborn Paladin. And I'll probably update the actual quest log to mention that as well. Because that is one of the first ones we've got now. Discover the fate. I should update that with, they found... Let's see, was it last session? I thought I muted you, Discord. Oh, I muted it for 1 hour and it's been an hour, that's why. I love it people like watch streams and then hear Discord go off and they're like, oh crap, my Discord. Sorry, it's not yours. So it was last session? No, the session before last, which this would be, what session was that? 74? Say session 74. Update that we found a, no, it was before that. It was actually like 72, I think. Shit, I don't remember. Whenever they found the first body, and I meant to update that so that eventually they find all of the bodies, or at least that can be a fun like side quest. Is they're locating where all the different people, all the different previous adventuring party died, and one of them was Devlin, which is how they got the staff. I believe that would have been the first Dungeon of Deception. 73, it looks like. Yeah, 73 update. Okay, I do have notes. Found the half-goat body of the human wizard Devlin on level 2. He had a spellbook, journal entry, detailing their final moments, and a magical staff. And then they could find, in case they go this way, and I have no idea if they will. Are we on 76 now? Nope, we're on 77. Jeez. Time flies with D&D. You found the body of the Dragonborn Paladin Sephirius. Because I already missed one of them, which was... I forgot which one. Seward, I think. Which is got turned into a tomb golem in the forge. And that's where the Starfallen was. So they actually skipped. The one thing they skipped in these first 2 levels was that forge room. And they've opened the door proverbially twice. Once from level 1, they went down and looked at it. And then once George opened on level 2. So they knew it was in there. And they just decided to not mess with it. In a rotating crawlway on level 3. Magic weapon, which I haven't decided on yet. And a crystal eye. Putting that down here, so that way I can add it quickly if they actually find it next session. Otherwise, I'll have to update the actual session number. And there's actually another one they might find also, which is the dwarf, which is in Aegin's tomb in 35. Found the body of the dwarf. What is he? Dwarf cleric. Bravas in Aegin's tomb. He had a gemstone, turban. Wow, belt pouch containing a 500 gold piece diamond, the material component of a raise dead spell. But you can't raise dead in this fucking campaign I've created. I'm a fool. I could just include a 500 gold point diamond. Turban, diamond, and 2 crystal eyes. It also says he's a non-magical shield. So I don't know if I want to make that magical or just say, yep, it's a non-magical shield. All right, so we'll add those down there. And then I don't know where Brixton is. I forgot. Or maybe he's on level 4 or something. So they're going to find Bravas and Sephirius on level 3. They've already found Devlin, and Seward was on level 2. It just leaves Brixton. They find him or not. So the crawlway is kind of cool because you can find you need to do the crawlway because that's where the keys are, and it just creates an interesting dynamic of having to constantly press on these plates and rotate the crawlway around and moving people back and forth between those 2 spaces, which I think is going to be the easiest thing to do. And then figuring out how they can basically make it through. I mean, the nice thing is it just snakes around here. It's not like it puts you in a whole different room that would separate you, which would be really crazy. Instead, it just drops you off right near the entrance to Aegin's tomb on the other side, so it's not a big deal. The big deal is getting that person untrapped without trapping another person. So that might be Orvix's fate. Maybe they'll send Orvix in the tunnel to untrap somebody and then leave him in there, which would be fucking terrifying, in which case I would definitely pull out my Revenant idea of turning Orvex into a Revenant that hunts the players down. Maybe after like a long rest, give a chance for the dwarves to come, the tomb dwarves to come like rescue him or something. Brixton is on the gear floor. Oh wow, we made it to the 5th level. Jeez. I remember it said he died from like poison gas, so I guess that's the gas from that central gear. That's really far though. The others died on like level 2 and 3. The shadow area is really freaking cool. I think it's supremely creepy. Do I have a... Do I have a token I can use for this? I don't want to use a commoner. I had a silhouetted token at one point, but I don't know what I would have called it in the art gallery. Let's try and look at commoner. No, I guess I don't. Shoot, I don't know what the hell I would have called it. I was going to use something cool to represent the shadow of the person. I mean, I could copy and paste the token, but that seems kind of weird. But that is what's going on. So number 33 is the Chamber of Opposition. You walk in, there's a stone font, which I think is like a well, like a fountain-looking thing. Holds 5 gallons of hot soup, but the liquid is illusory. Tactile exploration reveals the liquid has no substance and the font is dry. So it's illusionary green soup. And there's a figure right on the other side with his back to you. Or her. And when you open the door, it becomes a duplicate of that character. What is this room right here? Is this supposed to be open? What is going on here? Why is there like a fucking closet in this room? The shadow duplicate has the statistics of a commoner and is immune to poison damage. Perfectly matches the motion of the character who created it, always keeping its back to its creator, as though it was a projected image 15 feet ahead. 10, 15. So you open the door, and it's right here. But it has its back to you. Always keeping its back to its creator. So does that mean if you turn around, it doesn't turn around? Because it always keeps its back to you? If the character who created the shadow duplicate moves backward, the duplicate moves forward toward the font. Okay, now I'm confused. So it's not right here? The character then mimes drinking from the font. The duplicate slurps up the soup at a rate of 5 pints per round, draining the font in 8 rounds. Like anybody's going into fucking initiative order to do that. Once the font is drained of illusory soup, a treasure appears in the font that wasn't there before. Casting Dispel Magic on the font causes the soup to vanish, but the treasure does not appear. And then it reappears 1 minute later. So you have to go through the motions to actually make it appear. Shadow Duplicate can't exert pressure on objects and glides through any obstacles it encounters. Casting Dispel Magic on the figure causes it to vanish. Doesn't react to taking damage, but disappears if it drops to 0 hit points or is made to leave the chamber. Closing the door to the room and reopening it creates a new duplicate of whoever opened the door. There can only be 1 Shadow Duplicate at a time. The Shadow Duplicate has a terrible and deadly aspect. Any creature that looks upon its face sees a horrific visage locked in a silent scream and must succeed on a DC 15 Wisdom saving throw or drop to 0 hit points. Now that one does not say it auto-kills you, it just drops you to 0 hit points. So you would immediately have to make a death save. But presumably we're out of combat, so you could just stabilize them, I think. I'm not even sure it's worth rolling death saves if you drop to 0 outside of combat. And I guess people would have to still roll medicine checks or do some kind of healing magic or something. But I would probably more, instead of putting initiative, I'd just be like, hey, this person's at 0, they're going to start bleeding out, somebody's going to do something. It would cause you to obviously have to roll that lasting injury thing, though. Yeah, I am definitely tripped up by this room description. So, both of my parties immediately knew to have the duplicate drink. Really? That's interesting. That is one of the clues, though, isn't it? Where was my clues? Slake your shadow at the font. Yeah, which is... This one's actually one of the better clues. Which basically tells you, once you realize that's your shadow. But I really want to play it up and make this a really cool, creepy thing where, you open the door and you have this shadow in front of you, and it does, you can immediately starts mimicking your movement and it looks exactly like you. I'm just trying to figure out what I thought. Here was my initial thought process for this room. When I initially read the description, I thought, okay, so you open the door and the creature's back is to you. It mimics you in every way, as if you were projected forward, which means, but it's 15 feet in front of you, I thought. But apparently not. Apparently it's supposed to be right in front of you. But my idea is, if it's 15 feet, I'm going to put this token on so I can picture this better. If it's 15 feet in front of you, you open the door and it's right here, but its back is to you. Okay, so you're looking ahead at its back. And the key to solving this puzzle as simply as possible would be to simply turn around. The person who is open to the door and thus created the shadow would turn around and then mimic a, drinking motion. However, when you turn around, the shadow turns around and now faces the party. Presumably they're right there on the other side of the door. And anybody there would see this face, and that would trigger the DC 15 Wisdom saving throw. Because I think that's a cool fucking thing that happens. Is like, okay, it's a shadow copy. We know you have to drink the fountain because that's part of the clue. So I'll turn around and just start drinking. And as soon as they do that, they realize the one twist here is that, yes, it's a shadow copy, but it's got, and I'm literally picturing like the opening scene from The Ring, where they like find the girl in the closet who's been, I don't know, horrored to death. And she's got that fucking scary ass, like distended, bent face, like locked in a screen. It's a fucking terrifying image. And that's what I was picturing of this character who looks like your, fellow party member, except locked in that horrible, scary ass face when they turn around and just see that. It's just a super banshee, yeah. And I think that would be pretty damn cool. And just anybody, and I have to rule that anybody basically would be right behind this person, I guess, would see it. I don't know who all would be looking into this room at the time. In fact, let's play a game. Let's put this on the token layer. And let's presume. So obviously we got to open the door. Okay. So we've opened the door, and obviously Manix is seeing it like that. I'm going to change this token for sure. It still doesn't mention what the fuck this door is here. Oh, there it is. East of the font is a dusty, empty room. Great. That's fucking weird. Okay. So anyway, if you're here, obviously you can see it. If you're here, you cannot. And if you're here, you cannot. Okay. So actually, the way this room is built, it would really only affect this person right here, assuming everybody is actually lined up ready for the thing to go in and see it. So that's interesting. And if anybody files into this room that's not this person. So if you walk forward, that's why this closet's here. If you walk forward, you see it just glide through this door. And then if you turn around, you won't see anything happening because it's through the door. And then if you step backwards, it'll come back through the door. Okay. So it gives you a little more room to walk around, in other words. But if you have other party members file in here and then this thing turns around, I'm going to rule that it's basically like a gaze attack. Like they all fucking have to make this save. and or face the wrath of the shadow duplicate. I think it's a cool room, and that's how I'm going to design it. All right, so I am going to change this token into something. I don't know. I guess I could copy and paste that person and just turn off the sight, maybe. That would be interesting. Or I could do like an aura thing, or tint them. Maybe tint them black. Because let's say Mannix opens the door. Could I take his token, turn off sight, and then tint it black? And now his other token still works fine. Okay. But it doesn't have sight anymore. So I think that'll actually be pretty effective. Yeah, and that looks kind of creepy too. You literally see like a darkened version of your own token. Okay. And unfortunately, I don't know which one they're going to use, so that's not too hard for me to do on the fly. It took me a couple seconds. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, if I turn off has sight, does that mean he can no longer see out of this token? I think that's what that means. I'm seeing the thing right now because it's still emitting light. I can turn that off. There we go. David, how many hours do I prep for, or how many hours of prep do you do for every hour of a session? I will say I don't prep nearly as much as I used to. I used to over prep a lot when it came to session design. And for Tomb, I've really backpedaled on that. And I try and be prepared for different areas and situations, but I do a lot of ad-libbing and spur-of-the-moment stuff because I do think that can create a better situation. Hi, sweet girl. And a better dynamic if you don't. Because if you prepare too much, then you want, I think you want to over railroad maybe too much. You have an idea for everything and then it has to follow that process, or it's like ruined, in other words. And I think that's a slippery slope to go down for a DM. You do want to make sure that you understand how things work. So if players have questions, you can answer them. But I don't want to over prepare too much because I do want my players to be able to also guide the story and how different interactions work. And if something ends up, and I can't ever think of every situation. And if they end up solving something in a way that I didn't perceive, but that I think is cool, then I want to roll with that. So most of my prep work is during crafting, and then I do some prep work on Fridays. And then maybe a little bit during the week as well. If I've got an idea for something, I'll update some things along the way. But yeah, I definitely need to. In the future, I will split these up because we've been going 90 minutes now, and I've covered 3 rooms, and I meant to try and cover more of level 3 because again, I don't know where my players are going to go or what they're going to do, and dungeons are usually the easier thing to prep because they're in a dungeon. I can just do a radius around the party and be like, okay, I need to prep these certain rooms. I have to prep, a town or something and all these different interactions they can have. But this dungeon in particular is so large and so open, which I do like open dungeon designs. I think that's really cool, and it gives players a lot of choice and freedom versus, going from one room to the next. But from a DM standpoint, it definitely makes things more challenging. Because right now, I just prepped this whole northeast area, and they could very well say, okay, let's go back and do that other area we missed. Or, hey, remember there was another crawl space in here, let's go down there. Or, hey, let's check out this crawl space over here. They can go fuck all anywhere, even on just one level of this dungeon. So that definitely makes things a little more difficult for me. And they might want to come back over here. Kubazans is really easy. I don't really have to prep anything here. I have to be very careful about the descriptions of the murals, but it's just a whole bunch of things that they have to do in the right order. And it feels pretty obvious for me as the one reading this, but obviously that's also a trap to fall in as the DM, is puzzles seem easy, and then as soon as they're in your player's hands, they focus on the wrong thing or overanalyze something to death, and it ends up falling apart. So this could be a little fight up here, or it could be just another trickster god they end up with. I am thinking about changing this really cool horror area where you go through these increasingly horrific scenes of depravity and nastiness with these curtains of this feast gone horribly wrong, and at the end there's this giant boar's head that can charm you, and you put your head in there and it can decapitate you, which that is an example of a thing that I would rule would instantly fucking kill you. But I'm thinking about putting one of the crystal eyes in damn it, woman. It is 12:30. All right, yeah, I need to wrap this up. Putting one of the eyes in there because otherwise it becomes kind of a bullshit room, and those are annoying. So at least there's some reason for the party to go in there. But yes, I need to wrap things up. My family is coming down for lunch. Everybody's home from school and working from home, which does make crafting a little bit more interesting. But I think that covers a good little chunk of level 3. We'll probably actually make it further than I'm thinking because I don't think we have a whole lot of combat in this coming session. So I'll need to do a lot more prep work for tomorrow, and then after tomorrow's session, I'll be able to better dictate, obviously what the players have done and where they plan on going. But right now I'm kind of in trouble because I had them in one area and I kind of knew, okay, they're going to do this area first and then make a logical sweep around the dungeon. And now I jerked them over to one side of the dungeon. So now it's kind of all up in the air in terms of where they're actually going to go next. So who knows on that? All right. Thank you for joining me for Crafting Annihilation so much. As I mentioned, I think due to the patron poll, I'll be splitting up into 2 different weekly sessions of just me chatting with all of you, which I enjoy doing. Not this campaign, but probably for the next campaign that I DM, I will be doing that. So thank you all. I will be streaming again tomorrow for the next session of my State of Decay Let's Play. And of course, I will see you all for tomorrow's Tomb of Annihilation stream. See you then. Stay safe and stay sane. Bye.